Hello everyone, this is Miss Casey with FIBO Kids Art Academy and welcome back to another wonderful FIBO art class. Today we are going to be continuing our baking series and create a whole bunch of yummy desserts. Now you'll be able to choose your favorite desserts and pastries because as you may or may not know, bakers bake up a lot of these yummy desserts and pastries that we all love. So you'll be able to choose your favorites and bake them up yourself in your artwork. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we'll be doing today. So here on my table I have our sample. Now what I did is I used oil pastels and watercolors. I have this colorful background. Now we're going to be painting our background first, letting it dry with our watercolors. So we'll be using a separate piece of paper for our desserts and doing that differently. So that's why we will need some scissors and glue so that way we can glue it onto our background once it's ready. And then I also made it just a little bit more fun and added some sticker gems just to spice it up, make it a little bit more decorative. I drew cupcake, donut, cookie, and macaron. But again, you can choose your favorite desserts and what it is that you would like to bake for your pastry project today. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to move over my supplies for now. And first what we're going to be doing is rather than a practice draw, we are going to be painting our background first so that way it has enough time to dry by the time we stick our pastries or dessert onto our background. Okay, so that is going to be our practice draw today. So go ahead and take out your paper. Now, you want this to be your final paper, especially because we are using watercolor. So even though it's not necessarily a practice draw, but it is done before the final draw, we want to make sure that this is still our final paper. Okay. So go ahead and get a nice thick piece of paper, and you can go ahead and grab out your paint, your brushes, and your watercolor palette. All right, now to start off, what we want to do is we're going to take a pencil. Now I'm also going to be using a pencil because we don't want these lines to be too hard or press hard on our paper. These are just going to help us for when we go into color and make sure that our stripes in the background are nice and even. So I'm just going to use a pencil and press hard so that way you guys can see. It may still be a little hard to see, so just try your best and make sure to listen more closely than what I'm showing you because the directions are going to be a little bit better than seeing it with the pencil. But you do want to make sure that you're using a pencil, and rather than pressing hard, you want to make sure you are pressing super lightly because again, we don't want to be able to see these lines after we're done painting. But first what we're going to do, make sure your paper is vertical up and down. You're going to find the middle of your paper and go ahead and just draw right in the middle a nice long vertical line. Again, I'm going to make this pretty dark so you guys can see it, but you want to try and draw this nice and lightly. And if you have a ruler or a straight edge, you can go ahead and use that so that way your lines are nice and even and straight. Now once you have that middle line down the middle of your paper, you have two halves, you're going to go ahead and find the middle of your left side and go ahead again and just draw a straight line right down that middle of that section. And once you have the middle on that left side, go ahead and go over to the right and again find the middle and draw a nice long vertical line as straight as you can. If you have a straight edge or a ruler, then that might be able to help you, but this isn't meant to be super perfect. It's just to help us out a little bit. Now once you have those three lines, next what we're going to do is split each section again into halves. So we want to find the middle of each section. So I'm going to go on the very last section on the left, find the middle, and draw a line. And I'm going to do the same thing in the next section. Find the middle and draw my line. And next what I'm going to do on these last two sections is the same. Find the middle and draw my long vertical line. And for that last section, again, find the middle and draw that long vertical line. And so now, if you want to go ahead and count it with me, we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 sections on our paper. So we should have 8 sections, 8 different stripes, but that only means that we have 7 lines. So you don't want more than 7 lines, and you don't want more than 8 sections or 8 stripes. So make sure that you did that well. If you need to do it again, go ahead and try it again. You can always rewind, pause, whatever you need extra time. Okay, but again, make sure that those lines are super, super light. If you did press a little bit hard, I recommend right now taking an eraser and trying to erase them as best you can. So that way you still kind of see it, but it's not super dark. I'm going to go ahead and do that for mine. So again, it's not that dark. And now that you see it on your paper, you'll be able to follow along with me. Just going to go ahead and shake off. So now they're a little bit lighter. You still may be able to see them because I did press pretty hard. But that is light enough for me at least. Okay. So now that we have our 8 sections, we've made sure that they're not too dark of our lines. We're going to go ahead and take our brush. I'm going to be using my largest brush, my 3/4 inch brush here. And what you want to do is choose a few colors that are close to each other on the color wheel. So I'm going to be choosing colors like red, orange, yellow, and green. I like that color combination, and they're all pretty close to each other on the color wheel. Red is next to orange, orange is next to yellow, and yellow is next to green. I would not put red and green next to each other, so you want to make sure that the colors that go next to each other are next to each other on the color wheel. You can definitely choose yellow, green, purple, and blue instead, but again, make sure that you choose colors that are close to each other on the color wheel. If you want to do, instead of repeating colors like a pattern, if you want to do the whole rainbow, you can go ahead and do one stripe, one color of the rainbow, and there will be 2 extra sections. You can go and just paint those whatever color, as long as they're next to a color that's similar to it. Okay, and that's just because with watercolor, your paints will mix, and we don't want to mix in and get muddy colors. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is starting first with a red. It's going to be more like a pink reddish color. So I'm going to take my water. You always want to dip into your water first before you begin painting with watercolors. And I'm going to swirl very lightly into my red violet. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go ahead and paint just first in this first section. Now I don't want to go past that one line for this first stripe. And that is what our stripes are for. They're just to help us know where to start and stop our paint, but it will help us to make sure that they're nice and even, the best that they can, with not having to see a super harsh line in between each. Makes it really nice and beautiful. Okay, now once you are done painting in that first stripe, go ahead and take your next color. And again, make sure that next color is close to the first color that you chose. So I'm going to be using an orange, and I'm going to do a light orange, a yellow orange here. So again, I dipped into my water first, then I'm swirling into my paint nice and lightly. And I'm going to go ahead and start to paint this next section. And again, I'm sticking in between my lines. I don't want to go past my lines. If your 2 colors mix a little bit, that is okay. That is why we want to make sure that they are pretty close to each other on the color wheel, because if they mix, it won't make a nasty or dirty color. It will mix really well. Okay, so there's my second stripe, and again, I'm right in between my lines. It's a nice and even stripe. Once you're done with that, you can go ahead and clean off that color, dip a little bit into your water, wipe off that extra water, and then you can go ahead and choose your next color. So now next to orange, I'm going to be doing a yellow. And again, those colors are really close to each other on the color wheel. So I'm going to dip, wipe, swirl lightly into my yellow, and paint my next stripe. Now, if you have any color that is usually pretty light, like a yellow here, you can always choose to get it a little bit darker. And whenever you want watercolor a little bit darker, you would just use less water and a little bit more paint. That doesn't mean you get a lot of paint, just means you kind of get a nice even amount of a little bit of water, a little bit more paint. So now I have my red or my pink red, my yellow orange, and my yellow. And next I'm going to do a light green, which is also my yellow green here. Again, I'm going to swirl nice and lightly into my light green and then get my next stripe. Now in order for this to be even and have a nice pattern, rather than choosing another color for the next stripe, I'm actually going to be using the same light green, and I'm going to have a nice thick center color right in the middle. However, if you want to just keep going with a different color, you are more than welcome to, but just make sure that you do stay within those little sections that we have guided off. But since I'm using the same color, I'm going to go ahead and take that light green again and move on to the next section. Get it a nice big stripe. Make sure that they're even, so one is not darker than the other. Okay, so now I have my red, orange, yellow, and green. And next what I'm going to do is just kind of mirror it on the other side. So now I'm going to go back to my yellow, my orange, and then my red or my pink. So you can go ahead and do the same with the colors that you're doing, or again, you can just continue with more colors. So now I'm going to go back to my yellow, fill that in the next stripe. And the reason I'm doing this is so that way when the colors are next to each other, they again are next to a similar color. If I were to flip back over to my red, the red and the yellow are complementary colors, or sorry, the red and the green are complementary colors. So if they were to mix, they would not make a pretty color. They would make a muddy, dirty color. And we don't want that. So that is why I flipped it and went back to that yellow. So that way it was a similar color. Alrighty friends, so now I have my yellow. Next I'm going to go back to my yellow orange, paint that in. Alright. Now once I have that painted in, I'm going to go to my last color, which is going to be my red violet, my reddish pink color, nice and lightly, and paint that in. Now when you're painting, you want to make sure you really spread out any puddles. Make sure you don't have too much water. If you do, always grab out like a paper towel and just lightly damp off any extra paint puddles or water, so that way your paper does not rip. And it's really important that you really spread out all of that paint before you get more water or more paint. But that is going to be it for my background. I have all my stripes filled in with the colors that I want and like. And again, you can have done this with any other colors as long as they're similar to each other when you go right next to it. Okay, so if you need a little bit more time with painting in your background, don't worry, feel free to pause and continue working on your background. But once you are done, we are going to set this to the side because we want our background to dry fully before we glue anything onto it. So I'm going to go ahead and set my background paper off to the side. You can go ahead and do the same. And I do have a little bit of a dirty table now that I've painted. So next what I'm going to do is take out a hand wipe. So you might have a wipe like me, or you might have a wet paper towel. Go ahead and take that and then just nicely wipe off any paint that you got onto your table so that way you have a nice clean surface for the rest of our project today. Alrighty, so I'm going to set that down. And next what we're going to do is we are going to start on our final draw. Now again, I know we didn't necessarily do a practice draw. We wanted to make sure we got the background painted first. But for our final draw, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you 4 different desserts that we did or that I did in my sample. I'm going to show you the cupcake, I'm going to show you the donut, I'm going to show you the cookie, and the macaron. Now you guys can do each one of these drawings with me, and then if there's any other desserts, you can go ahead and continue drawing, and then it's okay that we're just doing a final draw, because if you don't like one of the desserts that you drew with me, or if instead of doing the 4 desserts that I did, if you want to do 4 different desserts, or you want to do 2 of the same and 2 different, we are going to be cutting this out. So you can just choose to cut only the ones that you want to keep for your final project. So we're all going to be doing the same drawing, and then if you would like to do more and add more desserts or a different dessert, you can just keep drawing, pause the video, and continue working and adding creativity in whatever it is that you would like to add. And then go ahead, once we get into our coloring steps, we're going to cut that out and color it in and all of that. And you can decide which ones you want to actually color and cut out to stick onto your final artwork. Okay? So that's why we're not necessarily doing a practice draw today. We're just going to keep doing the same drawings, so we might as well just stick to one drawing. Now for your drawing, you're going to go ahead and make sure that you are using a pencil. However, I'm going to be using a Sharpie so that way you can see my lines better on your screen. As you saw earlier, the pencil is a little hard to see, so Sharpie always works a little bit better for you guys to see nice and clearly. Alrighty friends, now what we're going to do, it does not matter where you place these drawings. Again, we are going to be cutting them out. You want to try and give your drawings some space so that way you don't accidentally cut into another dessert when you're trying to cut something else. So you do want to space it out. You don't want to draw too big, but you can draw anywhere on your paper. I'm going to start on the top left corner, and then I'm going to go ahead and just continue giving some space and then continue drawing. So if you do end up having a little bit more space on your paper, again, feel free to continue drawing, pause our video, and you can draw any other type of dessert that you would like. Okay, so we're going to be starting first with the cupcake. So make sure your paper is out in front of you. We are going to be using oil pastel and watercolor for these when we go to color these in. Now the watercolor that we use is going to be a little bit, it's not too much watercolor, so I do recommend you still use a thick piece of paper, but if you only had one thick piece of paper and you use that for your final picture for the background, then this can be any paper that you have, because we will just be using a little bit of watercolor, not too much. Alrighty friends, so let's go ahead and start with our cupcake. Now what we're going to do first for our cupcake is we're going to start with a curved line for like a letter U. And that's going to be for the top of our cupcake wrapper. Now once you have that letter U on each end, you're just going to draw a diagonal line, one on the left and one on the right, and you want them to come and end at the same point. Now you don't want these lines to be too long. You don't want a really, really tall cupcake. Cupcakes are pretty short. And then once you have the side of your lines, you're just going to go ahead and finish it off with the curved line for the bottom. Because cupcakes are a 3D object, they go all the way around. We want it to look curved and realistic. So now that we have the bottom where the cupcake wrapper usually is, next we're going to draw the top of our cupcake. Now there are multiple ways that you can draw the tops of the cupcake, depending on if you like frosting, if you like icing, if you like whipped cream. So I'm going to show you a type of way that you can draw the top of your cupcake, but if you know a different way, or if you'd like to do it a little different, you can go ahead and do that, and I'll also show you a few different ways that you can do it. So for our cupcake here, instead of drawing like a whipped icing or frosting, I'm going to draw just a very simple curved line. So I'm going to draw a letter C on the left and a backward C on the right, making sure that they're about the same height. Now once I have that letter C on the left and the right, I'm going to go ahead and draw a curved line like a letter U at the top of that. So it's almost like an oval shape, but we don't want to see that top part of the oval. So we don't want to fully draw it yet. Now once you have that curved line at the top, you're going to go ahead and finish that. And this time you can go ahead and make an oval for the top of that part of your cupcake. And then right underneath that bottom letter U, you can go ahead and add a few smaller letter U for the top part of the wrapper, all the way from the left side to the right side. Okay, now that's going to show you the difference from the wrapper to the topping of your cupcake. Now at the very top of your cupcake, you can choose to make this look however you want. Maybe you want some fruit toppings, maybe you want a cookie topping, maybe you want sprinkles, any kind of topping that you can think of. If you have a favorite type of cupcake you want to recreate, you can go and do that. Or if you want to just maybe make up your own type of cupcake, go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and just draw a simple cherry at the top of my cupcake. Draw the stem. Now once I draw a topping on that very top layer of my cupcake, I don't want this middle line inside of my cherry. Okay, so our cherry is overlapping this top part, so I don't need that line inside. So anything that you draw, if you happen to draw something over that line, you want to make sure to erase it. Okay. Now if there's anything else that you would like to add, maybe you want to add like a cookie, maybe you want to add some berries on the side. This is a very fruity cupcake. You can go ahead and do that too, and again, just make sure that you erase those lines. And then you also want to create like a curved line underneath to show that these objects are sitting into the frosting. Later on when we get to color, we will also add a shadow, but we don't need to draw it in right now. So that's a way that you can add in some topping if you want to have just some simple curved layers on top of your cupcake. You can also go in anytime you see the points of those smaller letter U's for the top of your wrapper. You want to find each point and you can go ahead and draw a diagonal line. For the lines on that wrapping paper. Now if you don't want any lines, you can go ahead and just leave it. You don't have to add the lines, but this does help to show where they kind of wrinkle up and ruffle out. Now say you wanted your cupcake to look a little different for the topping. I'm going to show you a different way that you could do this. Okay, so there's our wrapper again. Instead of two little ovals overlapping, you can go ahead and draw those letter C's again, and then continue with your letter C's rather than seeing it in the middle. You can do as much as you want or as little as you want, and then just add a little point at the top. That kind of gives you more of like a whipped cream or frosting kind of look. And again, you can add any toppings that you want. And just make sure to erase any lines that overlap it. You can add sprinkles, confetti, whatever it is that you want to add. And you don't have to add the cupcake wrapper if instead you want maybe a ribbon on it. You can go ahead and make your cupcake look however it is that you'd like it to look. Okay, now whenever you're done with your cupcake drawing, and I'm not rushing, you can take as much time as you need to go ahead and draw that. Just make sure you leave some space and you don't draw it too big. So both of these sizes are perfectly fine. This one's a little bit This one is a little bit bigger than this one, but you probably don't want any of your other desserts bigger than this size. So it's about maybe the size of my hand. This is about maybe the size of my fist. So your hands and fists are going to be a little bit smaller than mine, and that should be a pretty good size. All right. Now, go ahead and take a little break from decorating your cupcake. I know that may take some time, especially if you're being very creative or making up your own cupcake. I want you guys to definitely have time and have fun with that. But we're going to take a little break, and I'm going to show you how you can draw a donut. Now, for a donut, donuts are usually pretty big and round. So to start off, we're going to go ahead and just draw a nice big oval. Now, when I say it shouldn't be bigger than this size, if I were to go this way, it's again about the same size as my hand. So that is the same size, just a different direction. Now, once you have that nice big oval, you're going to find the middle, and again, just add another oval for the donut hole. Now, when you're looking at a dessert from a certain viewpoint, if you're looking at it from the top like we are here, you will be able to see a little bit inside of that hole. So you can also just draw a small curved line toward the bottom to show where that inside is. And then feel free to decorate your donuts. I've seen so many fun, yummy, creative donuts out there. I've heard of like the Cookie Monster donut, Fruity Pebble donut, a different type of cereal donut, Snickers donuts, so many types of donuts. It's so cool. There's some donuts that people put ice cream on. It's super fun. So you can definitely have a lot of fun with your donuts as well. They're not similar to a cupcake, but bakers get creative, and that's all what we're doing today, is learning how we can get creative and use art in the form of baking. Okay, there's a lot of art when it comes to baking. We just have to create it. So now that we have our donut shape, you can go ahead and get started with your creativity. I'm going to have mine have some glaze on it, so I'm going to do these nice big wavy dripped lines. Okay, and then I'm going to also add some sprinkles on my donut. I love a donut with sprinkles. You can even add a couple of small circles. Maybe your donut has some nuts. I also like some nuts on my donuts. Maybe you want to add little strawberry bits if your donut is a strawberry donut. If you're doing like a candy or a cereal donut, you can go ahead and copy the shape of that cereal. Maybe it's like a cinnamon toast donut, so you have little squares around for the Cinnamon Toast Crunch cereal. Fruity Pebbles, just little like ovals, pebble shapes. So you can, again, have fun with that, decide how you want that to look, and that's our donut. And again, if you want to do a second donut, maybe you liked your first one, but you kind of want to get another creative idea out, feel free to draw another one wherever you have space. If you do run out of space, feel free to just grab another piece of paper and continue drawing. All right, but once you have that donut, next what you can do is draw a smaller oval, and next I'm going to show you how to draw a cookie. Now, if you're not done decorating your donuts, that's okay. Go ahead and take a little break. I'm going to show you how we can draw out a cookie, and then you can always go back to either your cupcake or your donut if you need more time. So for my cookie, I'm going to draw a smaller oval. Now you can do this as big or as small as you want. There are massive cookies out there. There are mini cookies out there. Of course, we don't want anything too big, nothing bigger than the size of our hand, but you can definitely do that. Now, I'm doing a basic cookie shape, which is a round cookie or oval cookie. However, if you would prefer to do a certain shape of cookie, like around the holidays, we like to do cookie cutters and make our cookies look like Christmas trees or snowflakes. If it's around Halloween time, they might look like cats or witches, anything like that. So you can definitely choose a certain shape for your cookies instead. Valentine's Day is around the corner, so maybe you want a little Valentine's Day type of cookie shape, like a heart or something like that. You can definitely have fun with the shape of your cookie. But again, I'm just going to do a simple round shape. And for the cookie, you're not necessarily going to be able to top it too much. There are definitely cookies that are topped really well, but you want to mostly show the type of cookie that it is and maybe the ingredients or the items that are cooked into your cookie. So for example, I'm going to show you my sample again. This was a chocolate cookie. As you can see, it's brown. And then I've made it a M&M and peanut butter cookie. Now for my M&Ms, I just did colorful circles for the candy. And then from my peanut butter, I showed that there was these little like square bits of peanut butter. Maybe they, usually like when you do peanut butter chips or chocolate chips, rather than being super round like they start out, they melt into the cookie. So they tend to expand and get a little bit bigger. So they may be like a round shape, but just a little bit bigger, or a little bit more of like a rectangular square shape. It just depends. But you can definitely have fun with that and decide what kind of cookie you have. If it's like a peanut butter cookie or a snickerdoodle cookie, it tends to have a lot of texture. Like for the cinnamon on the snickerdoodle, you can just add a few dots on the top, things like that. For peanut butter, sometimes you have the little cracks in the middle where the fork goes down. So again, just have fun. Think about cookies that you may have eaten in the past. If there's a really fun cookie that you've eaten and it's something that you've never really tasted before, you can definitely recreate that. Or if, again, you want to make up your own. Have fun with that. So I'm just going to do, I love candy cookies. I love M&M cookies. So I'm going to go ahead and add a few M&Ms on my cookie because I love M&Ms. And then, let's see. Maybe I'll just add a couple more M&Ms off to the side. Just have an M&M cookie. Now, if you don't want to do cookies for your final artwork, again, you can just draw this with me and then choose not to color or cut it out, and that's fine. Okay, now if you are decorating your cookie or your donut or your cupcake, that is totally fine. You can pause and continue decorating that. But if you are working with me and you have some time to just take a break, go ahead and take a break. And then next what I'm going to show you is how to draw a macaron. Okay, now a macaron, if you haven't heard of them before, they're French pastry. And they look to me like little hamburgers. But it's just a cookie on the top, a cookie on the bottom. They're usually different colors. They're super fun and really tiny. And then it has a nice yummy cream filling in the middle. And then that is usually where the different flavors come in. So I've seen like butterscotch macarons, I've seen salted caramel, hazelnut, chocolate, vanilla, a whole bunch of yummy flavors. So to draw a macaron, you want to think about sizing. Donuts are pretty big, cupcakes are pretty big, cookies can vary, but macarons usually are really small. So if you choose to have a cookie in your final artwork, you want your macaron to be smaller than your cookie, smaller than your cupcake, and smaller than your donut if those are all the desserts that you choose to draw. So we still want to keep everything in the correct proportions and realistic, okay? We don't want a huge macaron if our cupcake is super tiny. All right, so for a macaron, I'm going to do this a little bit bigger just so you guys can see the lines clearly. But what we're going to do is draw a very small thin oval for the top of our macaron. And then you're going to go ahead and just draw kind of like a wavy line. As I was telling you, it kind of reminds me of like a hamburger. So this kind of looks a little bit like lettuce to me. So just a wavy line underneath. And then you're going to add two curved lines, one on the left, one on the right, and connect them at the bottom. That's going to be like the filling inside. And then for the bottom of that, you're going to go ahead and add another wavy line, but this time it's going to be facing upward. And then you're going to have a curved line underneath for the bottom of the macaron. So again, it looks like a little mini hamburger. but it's just the same cookie on the top and the bottom. So you're going to have kind of the same look, the top and the bottom, and then you have your middle filling. Alrighty. So that's going to be the macaron, and with this one, there's not much that you decorate really or can get creative with. You can definitely get creative with the flavors. I've seen a lot of really fun flavors: taro flavor, rose, milk flavor, lavender, a lot of different fun flavors. But what you show that with is the color of the macaron. So that's kind of where you can get creative, is change it to any color that you want. So if you need a little bit more time decorating your desserts, drawing more desserts, if you have more room, you want to draw some other type of desserts, there's other pastries like croissants. That I love strawberry croissants. They're so yummy. There's other pastries. If you have a certain pastry that your family likes to make a lot, like maybe bread, banana bread, zucchini bread, pumpkin bread. Maybe you guys like to make, instead of like really sugary cupcakes, maybe you guys like to make muffins instead. You can definitely make a muffin or draw a muffin. Let's see, what else is there? If you also have a pastry that is unique for your culture, I know that there's multiple pastries out there that are unique to certain cultures. I love baklava, super yummy. There's just so many different types of pastries and baked goods out there that you can definitely recreate and have fun with creating and decorating. So if you need more time, feel free to pause and keep working on your drawings. We're just doing our drawings right now. But once you are done with drawing out your pastries and desserts and goodies, next what you're going to do is take a permanent marker or a Sharpie like I have, and you're going to go ahead and outline all of your pencil lines, everything that you've drawn out. Now, if you did need to erase some lines like I did right here when I drew my toppings on my cupcakes, if you needed to erase any lines, make sure not to outline those. Okay, so be very careful, pay close attention, and make sure to outline any lines that you do want to keep. All right, so go ahead and take your time to do that. Now, once you are done outlining, your picture might look a little bit like this. So I've recreated another drawing of the 4 desserts I want to have in my final picture. And so I have outlined that. I don't have any of my eraser marks and anything like that, so that way it doesn't confuse you. So this will be my final drawing picture. It's all outlined. And so once you're all done outlining, next what we're going to do is get to our coloring steps. Now first, what we're going to be starting with are oil pastels. So you can go ahead and grab those out. Now we'll be using our oil pastels not to fully color in our pictures today, but to fill in our small details and to add shading. Okay, so we're not going to use our oil pastels too much. We'll be doing the rest, filling in the rest of our pastries with watercolors. And what we're going to do first is, for our cupcake, what you want to do is decide the flavors. Now, whenever you think of flavors, you can think of color as well. So for example, if you were to think of an orange citrusy flavor, of course you think of orange. If you were to think of banana or lemon, you think of yellow. If you were to think of blueberry flavoring, then of course you think of blue. So you can kind of think of these colors as you decide, or now that you have decided what type of desserts and pastries that you have. Okay, so for my cherry, I want to use red. Now, when you are looking into shading these objects, you want to think of the darker color for that shaded area. However, for my cherry, it's a small object, so I'm actually going to just fill in the entire object. Now, cherries are red, so I'm going to take my red here, and I'm just going to color that in. When you fill in with your oil pastels, you want to make sure to use the tip. Press hard and fill in all those white spaces. Now for cherry stems, usually they're pretty dark. You can use a brown or a really dark green. I'm going to use a brown here. Let's see, I don't have any, oh, there it is, my dark brown. If you get any little oil pastel crumbs, as I like to call them, you can just shake them off. My stem for my cherry. And then my frosting, if you want it to look more like maybe whipped cream or keep it white, you can definitely keep it white. You would just add some shading with a gray or even a blue. But for my frosting, I'm going to make mine purple. In my sample, I really liked the color combination that I used with purple and yellow. Those are actually complementary colors, so they stand out really nicely with each other. So I'm going to go ahead and continue that and use a purple for my frosting. So I'm going to take my purple here. Let's see. Use this one. And again, we're not fully filling in our frosting or our whipped cream or whatever it is you have on the top of your cupcake or whatever object you are doing. You want to fill in the smaller objects, but anything nice and big, you're just going to choose one side and add in some shading. So I'm going to do it on my left side here. I'm going to add in my shading, and you just want to go back and forth along one side. I'm going to go along the bottom as well, and I chose my left side to add shading to. Okay. Now there's also just a little bit of shading underneath these overlapped areas, so I'm just going to go under, add a little bit of shading there, not too much because that's not the main shaded area. Okay, I'm just going to add a little bit more shading on the bottom here. Okay, but once you've added in your shading, don't forget underneath any of your toppings, you do also want to add some shading under those. That's going to be your shadow. So you can add a little shadow underneath of that object, shake off any oil pastel crumbs. And then in the middle here you have, depending on how the top of your cupcake looks, you may have a middle section, which would be the actual type of cupcake batter that you used. So again, you want to think in the mindset of a baker. If you haven't baked before, don't worry too much. Just think about things that you've eaten, and that might help you a little bit. So for a cupcake, you might have chocolate cupcakes, vanilla cupcakes, red velvet. If you want something red velvet, it's usually red, a really nice deep dark red. If it's chocolate, you usually use brown. If it's vanilla, you would use yellow or like a tan. So I'm going to make mine chocolate. So I'm going to take my brown again here. I'm going to go right in the middle and fill in that middle cake area for my chocolate cupcake. Now if you don't have a little middle section or your cupcake area is not really sticking out, you don't have to worry about it. And then for my cupcake wrapper, I'm going to go ahead and take a darker version of yellow because again we're coloring in our large areas with just shading. So I'm going to take like a yellow orange here for my shading. Now watercolor is usually much lighter than when you go to paint it in, so you don't want to take too dark of a color. So I'm actually going to take this light yellow orange, and again you want to do the same side that you shaded with for the top of your cupcake, and you usually are going to see a nice big thick shadow on those sides, and they're going to be on the edge of each line. So as you get to each line, you're going to go ahead and add side-to-side strokes for your shading. But as you get closer to the other side where the light would be hitting it, your shadow, your shading is going to get thinner and thinner. So once I get up to the middle here, I'm going to start to get a little bit thinner. And then I'm also going to start to get a little bit shorter as well. Not too much shading at the bottom. So again, not as much shading as I had on that left side. Alrighty, so there is my shading for my cupcake wrapper. Now that is it. However, if you do have sprinkles or any other toppings, you do want to make sure you fill those completely in with your oil pastels because those are smaller objects. So for my donut here, I'm going to first get my sprinkles. So I can choose any color for my sprinkles. You can do just one color for your sprinkles, or you can do multiple colors. I like some colorful sprinkles, so I'm going to choose multiple colors. I'm going to do these light pastel colors here. So I did a light blue, I'm going to do a light green, and then I'm also going to do a pink. Okay, now that I have my sprinkles, that may be a little hard to see, but once you have whatever you decided to add to your donut, once you have those smaller areas filled in, then you're going to go ahead and add your shading. Now, if you decided to add some icing like I have here, some glaze, you can decide what kind of color that glaze is. There's chocolate glaze, there's strawberry glaze, vanilla glaze. Again, maybe there's been a whole bunch of types of donuts that I've seen, so maybe you created your own or recreated a different type of donut, so you can use any color that you would prefer to use, but make sure you don't fill it completely in. We're only adding shade. So mine's going to be like a strawberry glaze. So I'm going to take, let's see, I'm going to take a pink here, a dark pink, and I'm going to add in some shading along the edge. And again, you want to keep that shaded area consistent. So I've shaded on the left side of my cupcake. I want to go ahead and continue shading on the left side for my donut here. As you come across, oil pastels do blend, so just be very careful as you go across some of your other objects that are filled in. Okay, so there's my shading there. Now you will also have some shading inside. Usually the whole inner part of your donut is going to be pretty dark, so I'm just going to fill that in completely. So that way it's more of that darker color. And then don't forget the bread or the dough part of the cake part of your donut. So this again can be any type of batter flavor that you want, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry. What else have I seen? You can also do maybe like a red velvet cup donut. I don't know if those exist, but if they don't, make it up. So any cake flavor that you want there. I already have a chocolate cake, so I think I'm going to do a regular donut dough flavor. So I want to shade that in with some tan here. Now, when you have something overlapping it, like the icing, you want to kind of just go right along the bottom part of that icing. Okay, so there's my shading there. Now I'm going to move on, and again, we're just shading. We're not worried about filling in everything right now. So now I'm going to move on to my cookie. Now, I decided to make like an M&M type of candy cookie. So I'm going to choose some M&M colors, maybe like red, blue. Now, rather than being bright colors like my sprinkles, usually M&Ms are pretty deep colors, dark colors. I'm going to do a green. And then maybe a yellow. I have seen some yellow M&Ms as well. Okay. Oh, I have a couple more on that. And maybe I'll do another blue over here. And another red over here. Okay. Now for the little triangle pieces on the ends, I think I'll do like a tan to make it look like peanut butter. I love peanut butter cookies. So I'll have like a peanut butter M&M kind of cookie. I love Reese's peanut butter cookies. Those are so yummy. Just going to shake off some of that oil pastel crumbs, and then think of, again, the batter or the flavor of your cookie. Is it peanut butter? Is it chocolate? Is it fully chocolate? Is it a vanilla kind of regular dough flavor? Is it red velvet cookie? Is it a sugar cookie? Sugar cookies are usually a little bit more wider than regular dough, so it'd be more like a really, really light yellow. Not pure white, but a really light yellow. So you can kind of think of that. I'm going to do a regular dough. So again, I'm going to take, I'm actually going to do like a more darker dough color, like a chocolate. Or I like really, really, not burnt cookies, but really cooked golden brown cookies. So I'm going to take my brown here. I'm going to shade that in. Again, keeping it consistent on one side, my left side. Go around as carefully as you can on those objects that you filled in. Okay, once you got that shaded, next you can move on to your last dessert or pastry. I have my macaron here. I think I'm going to do a green. Haven't really used much green, so I'm going to do my dark green. Again, just the left side there. Now this little, it's a little hard to see, but if you're doing a macaron like me, the little wavy part underneath the top of the cookie, or the little lettuce part that I like to call it because it looks like a hamburger, that is going to be part of the top of your cookie. So I'm going to shade in a little bit of that as well with the same color. And then the bottom cookie is usually the same color as well. So I'm going to do that bottom area. And then again, that little wavy area is part of that same cookie, bottom part of that cookie. So I'm going to blend that, shade that in. And the middle area can be, again, just depending on what flavor it is, pretty similar to your frosting. If you want your frosting to be a certain flavor, you would follow along with that color. So I think like a lavender macaron would be purple. Say a lemon macaron would be yellow feeling. Vanilla would be yellow as well, or like a white. Chocolate would be brown. So I think I'm going to make mine, I think I like the lemon idea. So I think I'm going to do a yellow in the middle. Kind of have some fun with that. Alrighty. So once you have everything filled in and blended in, now I fully colored in the middle of my macaron because it's a small area. I'm not going to really be able to get watercolor in there, but the other parts of the cookie you can. Okay, so now that we've done that, you can go ahead and put your oil pastels away for now. We will come back to them when we come back in and add some highlights and some extra shading if needed after we're done painting it. But you can go ahead and next bring out your watercolors. Now with this step, I'm going to be using my medium brush because I have, smaller spaces than the background. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm going to dip into my water. I'm going to start first up at my cupcake, and you usually want to use the same color that you've shaded with because your watercolors are going to be lighter. All right, so my purple here, I'm going to take a purple. Let's see, I think this might be a little bit darker. I'm going to take my purple and fill that in. Now, if you end up seeing that your watercolor doesn't necessarily match the color that you've shaded with, that's why I said we can come back to our oil pastels and kind of fix up some stuff. You may need to choose a different color and mix that in with the color that you chose and get that reshaded. So it just depends. My purple is a little bit more of a blue violet, so it's giving more of a blue color instead of a purple. But Again, I can just kind of go back in with my oil pastels and reshade that area. Okay, so there's my purple. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the yellow part of my wrapper. Now be careful if you're using the same colors as me. Purple and yellow are complementary colors, so you really want to make sure that that purple is washed out of your brush before you continue into the yellow. Otherwise you will get like a muddy color. Okay. Now once you have that painted, you can move on. So now I have my donut. I'm going to use this reddish color, my red violet. Now as you're painting over, if you have any objects that are in the middle that you're going to be painting on, you can just paint right on top of them because oil pastel and watercolor do not mix. If you have big water puddles, just like I was mentioning at the beginning when we painted in our background, you can take a paper towel and just kind of dab off any big puddles. Okay, now for the cake part, I'm going to use this yellow orange, so it's more of a darker color than my yellow here. Could also possibly use a really, really light form of brown, but I like this tan. This yellow orange ends up looking more like a tan if you use it pretty lightly. Alrighty, there's that, or like a golden. Okay, so now for my actual cookie, I did use brown, so I'm going to use brown for the rest of it. I'm just going to paint right on top. Now if you have any parts of your oil pastel that are a little spotty, you have little white spaces, feel free to paint right on top, and then the watercolor will fill in any extra white spaces. Help it look a little bit more complete. Okay, there's my cookie there. And lastly, I have my matte brown. So I told you this was going to be a pretty quick step with the watercolors. Okay, I started with a light green, but I think I'm going to actually switch to a dark green. Yeah. That matches my shading a little bit more. So we're not using too much of our watercolors. Alrighty. So there's the end. I filled in everything, colored it all. So now when you're all done, you can put your watercolors away. If you are still coloring, you need a little bit more time, feel free to continue working. If you need a pause, you can pause and keep coloring it in. But once you are done filling in with watercolor, you can bring back your oil pastels. And if you need to do any color corrections, like for my frosting here, I'm going to take a different type of purple and see if that matches more. Let's see, that might be a little bit better. So you can do that as well if you need it. Your watercolors should be pretty dry since you didn't use too much, but if they are a little wet still, it may not work that well, so you can just wait till it's a little bit more dry. Okay, there you go. That purple looks a lot better. All right, and then if there's any other areas that you need to kind of correct your color, you can go ahead and do that. But now I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of highlight. So I did my shading. Now I'm going to go in with a white and add in some highlight. So I want to add highlight to my cherry. Have my white there. It might be a little hard to see on the screen. There's my cherry highlight. You can even do a little bit on your stem there. And then you can also do it on the lighter sides of your pastry. So it's a little hard to see, but oil pastel can be used on top of watercolor. Again, just want to make sure that it is more dry. And you can add some highlights. Now, usually frosting and different things like that can create highlights. So I would say highlights are pretty, would make it look pretty realistic. Okay, I added highlights on all my little candy there and my cookie. I can even add a highlight on the right part of my cookie here. And then my macaron, little highlight there. And then my donut, got a little highlight there on my drips. Might be a little hard to see depending on if you chose a really, really light color, but in person they are pretty easy to see. So hopefully you're able to see it on your picture. You can add it to your sprinkles if you'd like. Anywhere else that you would like to add some highlights. If you missed an area that needed a little bit of shading, like my cherry, I can go in and add a little bit of shading to that. Just to, again, make it look a little realistic. And once you're done and you are happy with how your picture looks, next what we're going to do, make sure it's fully dry. You're going to take out your scissors and you're going to cut all of those objects. I'm going to go ahead and take my scissors, cut my cookie. Now you want to try to go on the outside of your outlines. So you have the full size of your dessert there. But if you cut a little bit into your dessert, that's okay. Not a big deal. Just do your best. Also make sure that you're being very safe. So if you need help cutting it out, any of these objects, make sure to ask a parent or a grown-up nearby. If you need to wait, go ahead and just wait for now. You can cut it. You can always cut it out later when you have someone with you who can help. Now you only want to focus on cutting on the outer edges. Don't worry about cutting anything inside. For example, my donut, we do have a donut hole, but I'm not going to worry about cutting out that donut, little piece of the donut hole that isn't part of the donut. I'm just going to cut along the edges and worry about that only. It's a very small detail. For my cherry, the stem might be the hardest part. Just do the best that you can if you also drew a cherry. You can overcut for now and then make it a little bit smaller once you have more control. If you do see a little bit of white spaces, go ahead and just take your oil pastels or your coloring materials and fill in the little white spaces, and you'll be fine. Alright, there's my cupcake. My donut. Now, the smaller objects like my macaron here might be a little bit tricky. Just do the best that you can. The good thing about the macaron is that it's pretty similar in shape on both the top and bottom and the side, so it's not going to be too complicated. There's not really big shape differences, so it should be fine. donut. And now I'm going to go ahead and move that so I don't have too much paper around me. I'm going to just make this a little bit easier to control for me to cut. I'm going to go ahead and cut along my edges. If you have anything smaller, just again, do the best that you can. If you have any white spaces, just go ahead and take your Sharpie or the color that you used and just fill that in, and it will work out fine. Just again, be careful with your fingers and your scissors, and ask for help if you need it. Alright friends, go ahead and move those paper scraps off to the side, throw them out if you have a trash nearby. But that is all of my dessert objects. Next, your background, we're going to come back to it. It should be fully dry by now, but if it is not, go ahead and leave it. Let it dry a little bit longer. You may pause or just come back to this project when you're ready. But now we're going to go ahead and arrange our desserts. I like a little scattered look, but maybe you want it to look like they're all on like a platter you're serving. But I kind of like them spread apart and look like they're falling down this striped background. Okay, so with that said, my background is kind of curling up a little bit. You can easily flatten that out. But next what we're going to do is we are going to, getting a lot of oil pastel on the picture. We are going to take our glue and glue our artwork down. So I'm going to take my cupcake first. I'm kind of working in a large to small order, but you can do any order that you want. You don't have to do the cupcake first like me. Don't forget the little stem. Once you have that glue on, you can go ahead and place it wherever you'd like. Make sure it's nice and stuck on there. So you got all those edges. And once you have that, next I'm going to get my donut. And now I'm going to place my donut kind of like at an angle toward the bottom of my cupcake. And again, get that nice and stuck on there. Next I'm going to get my cookie, add my glue on the back. Alright. And also make sure that when you're placing these down that you have the right side in the area that you want. So all of the shadows should be on the left. That would make sure that your desserts are all facing the right way. Your donut, you don't want it to be flipped. Your cupcake, you don't want it to be flipped. Your cookie, you don't want it facing the wrong way. So just keep an eye on that. Now I'm going to get my macaron, place it last, down toward the bottom, have a nice good spacing, and there is my project. Now, in my sample I showed you guys, I added a few extra details. You guys are more than welcome to leave your picture how it is. If you want to add maybe some other objects, you can definitely take some oil pastels and just have fun in the background. You can create a pattern, you can add other objects or pastries if you want smaller. I would make these your main desserts or pastries. But you can also have some fun with glitter or gems. I have these sticker gems here. And so you can have fun, decorate the background. You can even decorate on top of your objects and desserts. So maybe if you have similar colors to the colors that you chose for your background, maybe you can add your gems to those colors. Like I have purple here, I can do purple there, purple there, purple there, purple there. We have some over here as well. Maybe I also want to do some red in that object. But maybe instead of in the similar place or similar color, maybe you just want them scattered all around. So just go ahead and have fun with that. Figure out where you want any extra decoration or details. You can have fun, you can get creative, and you can do as you please. So I hope you guys had a lot of fun with this project, and I hope you guys learned a little bit more about how art is incorporated in baking, and a little bit about what goes into baking some yummy desserts and pastries. And I hope this inspires you to maybe create your own baked goods, pastries, desserts at home with your parents or loved ones, and you can actually make your drawings come to life. So thank you guys so much for joining in. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this project, and I'll be seeing you again for our next project as part of our baking series. So have a great one, everyone. My name is Miss Casey, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.